Welcome to episode 3 of the X. I can't even talk today. Wait a minute. Welcome to episode 3 of the Reclamation Point Podcast. I'm your host, Motown Lee, and I got my partner,
Dr. Ed Garnes riding a shotgun, pouring the sweet tea ethics that you know and love.
He on that tea. He on that tea. So you know.
You know it's going to be a good episode, right?
He on that tea. It's going to be problematic. You know what I'm saying? There's been a lot. Listen, Ed, we talk frequently, and there's been a lot going on. And, of course, we focus on the mental health aspect of everything. Mm-hmm. Seeing that, that's what we about. And I think one of the things that touched both of us was this therapist in Cleveland.
Yeah.
The sister who went viral she frequently made posts about, men and therapy and just things that this, that, and the other. But one particular post got reported, and she ended up essentially losing her job based on that. Now, Ed has been hip to it. I actually was, I found it this week, and I was like, I immediately hear Ed and like, what do you think about this? Because, this is her as a therapist.
Yeah.
I found it alarming in her approach.
Tell us why, Motown.
Because not only was it just the language, but the aggressiveness and she seemed to kind of chastise brothers to pushing to seek therapy. Like, y'all need to get therapy, blah, blah, blah. And me as a person who was just so anti-therapy for all these years, if somebody had taken that approach with me, there's no way I would be in therapy.
You would have said peace out, or you would have?
Yeah, it would have been. It would 100% been a fight. Like, I would have been like, what? You don't know what the hell you talking about, and like this and this, because it didn't come from a place of caring. It didn't come from a place where like, hey, let's sit down and let's talk about something. Like, let's talk about what's going on with you. It came from a place where like, y'all MF is this, that, and the other. And so I was like, let me call Ed, because I need Ed's professional opinion. How do you
reconcile it?
Just not even how does a person that calls himself a professional, like, how do you approach, that? Or matter of fact, just before we get to that, what's your opinion of?
I have several opinions. Like, the reason why I didn't even bring it to you is because I hadn't thought about how I felt about it. Like, I try to think about things, that really hit me on a deeper level. And so what I was conflicted about, this is, I heard my dad saying, well, Edward, two things can be true at the same time. So it's a both and for me. So the first part is that anyone that dedicates their life to therapy, being a therapist, therapy is a thankless job, right? And so anyone that dedicates their life to that, I give that sister props. People have no understanding the levels of what therapists go through, especially being a Black identified therapist in a white space. Mm-hmm. So the sister is navigating a lot. So I want to give her props for dedicating her life to helping others.
He's being compassionate for the therapist. I get it.
But a critique is coming. I said two things can be true. All right. So we have to understand what therapists go through. But also, we have to be mindful that as therapists, we have to separate our personal life and we have to separate our professional life. I don't think that the sister should get fired because I don't believe in censorship. I believe that everyone should be able to talk. And whenever censorship happens, it normally happens to Black and brown people, or people that are non-white. So I don't believe in censorship. I believe there's another way for not saving her job, but there's a way to mediate this situation without her losing a job. So her personal opinion, she has the right to say whatever. But in her TikToks, the fine line that she crosses is inserting being a therapist, working as a therapist, where she, I don't know if she mentioned where she worked by name, but they found her. So like that line is tricky. You can have your personal opinions, right? But as a therapist, we are guided by ethical guidelines. And the first one is to do no harm. Right. So if you're using language that is dismissive to anyone and language that seems like it's brewing of hatred of men, especially black men, then that's problematic in its usage. And so that's why I said it's a both and. I don't think she should have lost her job, but we have to be mindful as therapists. We set the tone. So we talked about constantly about the invitation for therapy, right? Mm-hmm. So if I give you $100 soup in a toilet bowl, you don't want that soup. Right. So if you're dealing with black men who already are apprehensive to going to therapy, have all kinds of things trapped within masculinity that prevents emotional expression, hollering at them, calling them out of their name is not a way to get black men into therapy. And what happens is that if someone spews this kind of hatred against men and black men don't go to therapy, then we're in the wrong when we don't know how many people have been impacted and have chosen not to go to therapy because of this incident. So I think it's ripe for conversation because I'm conflicted. Like it kept me up at night. That's why I hadn't even hit you yet because I had to let it stew before I even had an opinion.
I mean, for me personally, I felt it's crazy because I know that I felt personally attacked in the matter, right? And it since it came and she was just so aggressive, right? And I think that a lot of times, a lot of people, when you deal with black men, when you deal with us, a lot of people think it's like we only react to being chastised in this aggressive manner.
Yes, sir.
Right. And it don't and what people don't realize, people that are not black males, what they don't realize is it does the total opposite of what you're trying to get accomplished. When you come so people can witness us aggressively talk to each other, right, about sports or whatever, right? And they think that that's how we talk everyday life. That's how we want to be approached, right? And that's just black men vernacular amongst themselves. Not anyone else. This is just our little thing that we have.
Our code of ethics.
Not for, and so now when you bring in a sister to now, want to have certain conversations with us and they feel like it has to be a place of aggression. It does not sound right, right? It does not sound right to us, to our ears. We get the frustration. We get you trying to get your point across. We understand that. But if you're trying to get get a reaction and get the reaction you need or want out of us, it doesn't work. And the reason I thought, I was like, we need to discuss this. Yeah. Wasn't because she was a therapist, but I thought it was like pertinent information that we talk about why black men don't go to therapy, why and other people's quest for us to seek this this knowledge or this self-awareness or this place that you may have gone and you're like, yeah, I want everybody to get this feeling, you know what I mean? You should, and you wonder why we don't understand and we reject it.
Yeah, she's not leading in love, and that's why I was conflicted because a part of me, society tells us to dispose of people, especially black people. We don't have a lot of empathy for. We'll forgive everybody else but our own, right? So, it took a minute, but I did have to put on my therapist hat and understand that everyone deserves empathy. Everyone deserves to be heard. And, it sounds like it might be coming from a place of pain. I don't know the sister. I haven't had a conversation, but it's definitely something that has transpired with black men as to why she's taking that particular tone. But I think you make some important points about, the attractiveness or how we advertise therapy to black men, because you don't have to come at us aggressively, because you all would be shocked. I am the aggressive one. I think Motown is a lot calmer than me. I'm a firecracker, right? But you would think conventional wisdom would say, based on our backgrounds, Motown would be more aggressive, but Motown is very calm and collected. He probably normally has to keep me in my seat when things happen, because I'm a little more excitable. So black men are not monolithic. But, to your point, Motown, I think what keeps black men from therapy is shame. As much as we say, be emotional, express yourself, still in American society, we still attach emotional expression to weakness when it comes to men. And so we don't have a lot of elasticity in our definitions of manhood. And so that shame, feeling less than, not feeling appreciated, not being okay with not being okay, is something that is a constant reclamation project, which is why this is called the Reclamation Point, because black life, period, is a reclamation project. And then when you look at black men, we are often in situations where we are always trying to reclaim our dignity, whether it's police involvement, whether it's work, professional things. We're always trying to get our dignity back. And so we're not going to put ourselves in harm's way when therapy is supposed to be about helping us reclaim our dignity. We're not going to step in a hot space that doesn't seem to value us.
And so, and you made a valid point. I think with that being said, I wrote this down, and I wanted to get into them. Some of the reasons black men don't seek or don't go to therapy. One, the social stigma, finances, just the generational thought and teachings. It's also taught that, it's also told to us that it's weak. It's therapy is for like the mentally weak. And I think that goes to the social stigma, trust issues, and then just the lack of diversity in therapy in world. So let's first touch on the social stigma, right? Because you just talked about that just a second ago. When we talk about, what therapy is, right? Socially, amongst black men, it's just this thing. Like, if you go into therapy, something must be wrong with you, right?
You're flawed.
Or somebody made you go. Or
your girl sent you, or however you identify.
Or, you weak. Or it just, black people don't go to therapy. Those things. So the social stigma has something to like of relevance amongst why black men don't go to therapy. And how do we attack that? How do we address that and change that stigma?
I think first we have to redefine what therapy is. Like, therapy is whitewashed in our notions of how we look at therapy. So, I take an African-centered approach. So as a black therapist, my goal is mental liberation, right? Liberation of the mind, body, and spirit. So that's how I look at therapy. It is to illuminate missed opportunities. It's to illuminate strengths that you have that you might not be privy to. So we have to just redefine what therapy is. Psychology at its core is about mental process and behaviors. So what therapy for black people is about, You get your mental liberation by understanding the ways and mental processes, like the way that you think, how that impacts your behavior, how that also not only impacts your behavior, but how it impacts how you process your day. And then for Black people as well, you have to deal with not only social stigma, but we Black in America, right? So you also have to deal with all of the wranglings of racism and how that impacts us. And we also have to understand that for therapy, what is selling, like what's the most important thing for an individual is different, right? So you might have a brother that his most important identity is his professional life and not his role as a Black man. So identity is also important. So how you break down that social stigma is to articulate to Black men that you've been in therapy. If you've ever been to a family reunion, you've had therapeutic conversations, the barbershop, therapeutic conversations, mentor, coach, therapeutic conversations. So if Black men realize that they had conversations that have moved the needle for them mentally, it's easy to get them to buy into therapy when it's advertised in that way.
And that's important for me. If it was addressed to me. So for me, right, for me to finally get to the point to be open to seek therapy, right, it was number one, just having a conversation with you, right? Somebody who I love, somebody who I respect. And now, Ed is, in the therapeutic, now Ed has, he is a doctor, and of course we can talk before that, but it wasn't one of those things that I'm like, okay, I respect this person enough to like medically or give me his professional opinion to go and actually seek therapy, right? So that played a part in it. Another thing was having conversation around and with some of my other homeboys who go to therapy, right? Some people that's close to me. I won't say their names because I don't know if they want people to know.
You know what I mean? You got to protect it.
But they having the conversation with them, and they're like, yeah, I go and it's helped. And I'm like, oh, okay. So now I'm like, all right. But there was times where people would like go before, right? And I tried it before, and but I didn't try it the way, I didn't give it the old heave ho.
So what was it about the conversation? Because we had a challenging conversation because I pushed you in that conversation. But why were you receptive to it? Because I think that's how you break down social stigma, is that it was something in that conversation that happened, or a technique I used, or an approach that made you say, hey, this is okay.
Because number one, I felt like it was coming from a place of like caring. It wasn't coming from a place of like, it wasn't a reaction. Before, I think when people suggested therapy and stuff, it was a reaction to something I may have done, or something like a relationship kind of thing. It was like, what? Like, you telling me to go because you don't like,
okay, all right.
We had a disagreement about our relationship and you don't like the place that we're in, so you want to suggest therapy. Yeah, right.
Peace out.
I'm not really trying to hear that thing. Or and then also, and this is a thing where I think is so important, right, that we wanted to do Reclamation Point because I don't want other brothers to get to the point that I got, right? Because I don't want it to get to the point where like you feel like you can't get out of it, you can't shake it off. You know what I mean? Because consequently, it could be too late. After it's never too late, but you can go to a dark place.
Yes,
and,
I've been in that dark place.
And so now the reason I'm like, okay, let's have this conversation, because I hated the place that I was in when I realized that I was in that place, and I'm like, wait a minute, like, what are we doing? I should not be in this place. Like, let me figure it out. Let me talk to Ed, who's been reaching out to me all this time, and now I'm talking amongst my other brothers, and they're like, hey, yeah, they didn't necessarily, and me in their conversation, it wasn't even a suggestion. It was just having a conversation amongst friends.
Yeah, and I think. I'm glad that you made that point because I was thinking about that as you were talking. Like, I never text Motown and said, hey, Motown, I'm trying to encourage you to go to therapy. Hi, Motown, you're thinking about a therapist yet? I was just generally checking on him because I saw that things had changed. But when he asked me some direct, mental health questions as his brother, I put things on the table for him to consider,
And I think it's so... with the social stigma and everything, I think that sometimes, because Black men, we bear a heavy burden, right? And I don't think that I look at the burden we carry and why you should seek help about your mental health. It can be, everyday work stress. It can be everyday societal stress. It can be relationship stress. It can be these different kind of performance, or lack of thereof. There's a lot of stresses that play a part, that if we seek help mentally, it'll put us in a better condition physically. Or if you're in a bad physical condition, you don't know that part of, the negative on your physical weighs on psychologically.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what you're essentially talking about, help seeking, our ability to say something is wrong, I need help. That's actually a skill. So that's something that we have to open the door to facilitate in Black men and help them develop help seeking skills and let them know it's okay. But help seeking is a skill. People just don't come out and say, and they're help seeking, Help seeking is a skill that has to be nurtured. And so when you look at the hatred and all of the things that are spewed against Black men, the invitation has to be very loving.
Right.
In order to help Black men develop those skills of help seeking. And that's why social relationships are so important, because if you notice, we constantly talk about other brothers helping us process things, which then leads us to therapy.
And that's important. Going to number 2, and this is in no particular order, just like a hip hop top 5. This list is in no particular order. This is just the order and some of the things, and there's many other reasons, but this is just some of the points that we wanted to make. Number 2, finances. A lot of people think that they're not able to pay for therapy. That it costs an arm and a leg, and I think that goes back to kind of social stigma, because therapy was quote unquote this rich people's something that only they had access to.
I mean, there is still a privileged aspect to therapy. So while it has become more affordable, it is about the dollar bill, because if you have insurance dictates the kind of treatment that you can get. So while I was working at a center one time, we had to really, walk an ethical line. We know that the client needs this, but the insurance company is only going to pay for this. So insurance companies are now dictating diagnosis, right? So there is a financial implication to therapy. But what brothers have to know is that some therapists have sliding scales, meaning that based on whatever situation, they may willing to slide their scale lower for you to be able to afford it. There are also resources and nonprofit organizations now that are funding therapy for Black men. So yeah, finances is real, and so if you do not have insurance, then you have to pay out of pocket, and it can get very expensive. But don't let that be a deterrent. Ask for a sliding scale, and on a rare occasion, you may find someone that may be willing to work with you based on your specific situation. So I would say, while finances in healthcare is an issue, don't let that deter you from help seeking, and try to find resources that have sliding scales. That's what it's called in our industry, or organizations that may supplement the fee for your therapy.
So the next one, trust.
What are you throwing it out for me to just go with it, or I have a lot to say on trust.
So let's touch on that, because I think that we all, as a black man, I think we have a problem with trust, and that we have a problem with trust in relationships. We have a problem with trust in friendships. We have a problem with trust in ourselves, and so we damn sure gonna have a problem with trusting somebody that we don't know talking to us about in these tools in our mental health. Because when you go to therapy, you're exposing yourself.
You are
To somebody that's a stranger, essentially. Like, it's not anybody you grew up with or anything. And so you and I are different, but that's not the situation a lot. And so it took, so the first time I tried it, it's like, this shit ain't gonna work, because I'm not even gonna
you're not listening to
this dude, right? He didn't look like me. It was suggested by somebody I knew, and I respected them, but I was like, this person knows this person, so this person is going to expose my business to this person, right? So I was like, nah, I wasn't receptive. But trust is a major issue. So how do we address that?
It's one of those simple but revolutionary things. You have to have a therapist that actually loves black people. And I know that sounds weird, but not every black person loves black people. So you need a therapist that loves black folks to the core, because I think only my therapist training is how I had empathy for that sister. In my private life, I might have been like, oh, she crazy, she hate black men. But the therapist in me is like, everybody has some kind of redeeming quality. You have to love black people. And trust has to be earned. All right. So I am not a therapist that when folks come to me, that I expect them to trust me immediately. I try to do things to build trust. And I'm not always successful at building trust, because it is very difficult to get black men in therapy. I'll give you a situation. When you work as a therapist in certain organizations, even though I am, one Dick Gregory, a quote from Malcolm X, the agency I was working at represented the system to this young brother. So as much as I was caring, I had my African-centered approach, I was showing love to this brother, he did not trust me, because where I worked represented the system, and the system had always been problematic for him and his family. So as much as I wanted to do good, the systematic issues that this brother had been through, it was a class thing. So he saw me as, a upwardly mobile Negro that didn't know nothing, right? He didn't know I got a lot of street sense, right? So he saw me a certain way and did not trust me. So what I'm saying is that even though I know these things, that the barrier of trust is so deep that, mistrust can happen even to a person that loves and cares about black people.
Wow. That, and I think that is important, because the approach that other people can take to therapy isn't the same approach that black men can essentially take or will take. because we are different. Our life experiences are different. And so with life experiences, this is why you won't trust, because you feel like nobody else is going through life or going through these experiences.
Yes.
Respect to the sisters, and I love it, and I love their support and everything. But even the sisters don't go through some of the things that we go through.
I will say, the racism and the things that sisters go through is just a different flavor Kool-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
We still got the racial Kool-Aid going. Theirs might be red, ours might be orange.
Right.
But I would say it's different. But I would say the magnitude is the same. But how it manifests itself is different. I think one particular difference is just the fear of our presence.
Mm-hmm.
Like me and you could walk in a room and they about to put guns on us just by us walking in the room. We hadn't even said anything yet. So I think that's a qualitative, difference.
And so the next one, just the generational view, the generational aspect to therapy and to approach. When you look at some of our fathers and our granddads and like, just hardcore exterior to where like, I could picture, my old granddad, like, therapy?
Oh.
Boy, let me tell you something. What you do is you go get you a little drink.
And some Robitussin.
Yeah. You know what I mean? This is what you need to do. You know what I mean? Like, what we talking about? You are not about to go down there and pay for. You want to pay for somebody to talk? Come here, give me the money. I'll talk to you.
Yeah.
And psychologically, what that does is you're that's embedded in you, and so now fast forward when you're a grown man and you just have all of these things just piled up, and you're about to blow.
Yes.
What do?
I got a story for you, Mo. That's probably gonna shock you. He's still recovering from me being an a-hole from last week. But I'll tell you about generation gap. So my dad grew up poor. I mean, his floor was dirt. Grew up poor in South Georgia. So my father learned to deal with being poor by Black excellence. So he's valedictorian. He goes to Morehouse. What he does not learn is how to express himself emotionally. So I entered the counseling world because I was an activist, and it's not going to shock you. They wanted to kill me because of my activism. So I go to therapy and realize I have a lot of issues with my father, and we're bumping heads. And so that's part of the thing that I'm processing as a young 20-something-year-old man. So I wrote this letter to my father of almost 100 questions that I had for him, right? Because his generation, y'all don't talk about, we can talk about life, we can talk about sports, emotions we're not going to talk about. These were deeply emotional questions, even asking him what did he go through to his life for him to end up emotionally unavailable, right? Through that conversation, Edgar Sr. was never a hugger. I swear after that 100 question interview that we did, now did I like some of his answers? No. I thought some of them was BS, but most of them were pretty good. From that conversation, I think, we start to chip away at that generational thing that says that you're not, everything that happens in the home stays in the home. Don't you go talking to nobody. Don't you show weakness. What I found after doing that with my dad and us having a therapeutic conversation, he became a hugger. To the point that after that of 20-something years of us, I can't remember the last time I got a hug. I mean, we hugged, we told each other we loved each other, but what we broke down was that generational divide that said that Black men have to raise their kids harsh because the world is harsh. Mm-hmm. The world is harsh, but you still need a little sensitivity.
Right.
Like Ralph Tresvant.
And that's extreme. That's extremely important. I think it goes back to the beginning of the conversation today about the approach, the hardcore approach that's taken when it comes to dealing with Black men, and for us to be receptive to therapy for us to be receptive to address certain issues that people feel like we may or may not have. And a lot of them, like, you're not a professional, so you can't analyze what's going on with me. But the chastisement and the hardcore,
Yes.
Life is tough. If I want anything to take away, people to take away some things, when you're dealing with a black man, realize that every day is a black man in life. Like, life is tough. We look at Barack Obama, who was the president of the United States and had all the, outside of being president, he was an accomplished scholar.
Yeah.
Community
activist.
Right. Married to a beautiful black woman.
Powerful
beautiful
in
black
her own right.
Children. So with all of these things, he still felt everyday racism and things of that nature, dealing with a society who essentially basically tells him every day, no matter what he tries to do, and he was as centrist as there it could be in a president.
Oh yeah,
and they still
a lot of patience.
They still hated him, and he still got the hate, and he still got the aggressiveness and the chastising. So if someone like Barack Obama, if that people took that approach with him, what do you think the everyday black man is dealing with? So if for us, and to find refuge and to find ways for our mental wellness, a lot of times people, and I applaud the sisters. They like, part of their mental wellness and helping them mentally is taking vacations and something like that. I don't find refuge in like vacations and laying up on the beach and relaxing. That just doesn't do it for me.
Everyone has their own healing suite. Like your healing rituals are specific to you.
And that goes to a healing ritual is, watching my team play.
Yes.
Watching, my favorite artist, Anita, and rapping along with music. This is where I find refuge. This mentally helps me. This is the things I gravitate to when I'm feeling, and getting in that place. Mm-hmm. So I guess I say all that to say, professionally, what are some of the things that we can do at home? What are some of the things other people, other brothers, sisters, what are some of the things that they can do to make their mate, brother, cousin, father, be receptive to, seeking help or addressing their mental well-being?
Don't talk at, listen to. Mm-hmm. We've been talked at since the beginning of time. Black folks and black men in general, we have been talked at. This is what we need. You won't know what a person needs if you don't allow them a space to talk. Mm. Listen. That's the best thing that we can do to black men, is provide a space of vulnerability and a space to listen. Think about all the things that we hold. When have we been listened to in our life? Think about that. And I'm sure it's a minuscule amount of times someone has actually listened to you. I told you, so simple is revolutionary.
And that's one of the things that helped me, just listening. And a lot of times that's just the thing. Me listening to other brothers having a conversation about therapy opened it up for me. Me listening to Ed and just being receptive, and it opened the doors for me. So if it helped me, it definitely can help others.
And I may talk in a session. I had a session with a brother, Mo. It was an hour. I talked 3 minutes. He talked for 57 minutes. Mm. He thought I had done something. All I did was give him a space to talk.
That's the thing, man. And I think that's important because, for brothers, like, therapy is this judgment-free zone where you can actually get a lot of things off your chest.
Yeah.
Man, we all have a lot of things built up, and we just want somebody to listen. Sometimes just getting it off your chest is therapeutic.
And like we said last week, don't listen for competition. Listen for understanding.
And so with that being said, I think that's the perfect way to close out this episode of Reclamation Point. Thank you to U42 Studios. Check us out on all platforms, like, comment, subscribe to our U42 channel. Check out the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere that you can find a podcast. Thank you to my brother, Dr. Ed Garnes. And this has been, I'm Motown Lee. This has been the Reclamation Point Podcast. We out of here.
Man, I said good times. We just trying to make some good